セガサターンシロ
What's up, everybody? Friday SHIRO show. SaturnDave and TraynoCo.
Hello, hello. All
How
my
is it
peoples.
going?
Everyone on the internets, all the interwebs. How's it going? My name is...
That's a black card
blank.
again. What the hell?
Black card, SquarePants.
Black card,
Who lives in
SquarePants.
depression? Under the sea,
Oh my
Patrick,
God.
Black card.
It's
and
just...
cannot be seen by any human being. Patrick, no.
I'm gonna have to figure that whole thing out. You know, like, why does it do
Just
that? I don't know.
the entire OBS.
Well, what's that? Somebody... I hear their garbage truck or something.
Sorry, that's my dump truck butt. Just
Oh,
getting
okay.
through here.
Okay,
That
so...
dump truck ass.
Yeah, so today on SHIRO Show, we are talking... We're probably gonna talk a little bit more about the cancel games, maybe. I don't know. And his
Oh, it's Derek. He's in here.
analysis of the leaked
Derek,
docs.
mute your mic.
Irimajiri clears the air regarding SOA, his comments on the lecture. We got talking about last week's SHIRO show. We did live with Danthrax, and we went through all the documents. That was great. Editor's Corner, Driving Strikers, Gex Trilogy announced, Fantastic Pinball, SHIRO Co-ops with Terra Player, and Dream Pie released. Whoa, and it just keeps coming. Taito LD game collection. So there's a lot we have to talk about on SHIRO show this week.
Me.
Also, might I add, we didn't talk about the night story last week. We skipped it.
Aw, damn.
Which one? Oh, yeah, that's right. You know what? We talked about the canceled games. We kind of ran through them. Why don't we start with the Knights thing? Once we go through updates and stuff
Let's
like that.
skip it because we want to be mean to Danthrax.
Shouts to Pudgy Bunny, David Zaney, Tom Fun, Julian, Michael Friesch, who else? Soruko, Kid, I can't say your last name. Retrospectors, hey Dan.
Works.
Soruko works. Okay, and everybody in the chat, please give us a thumbs up and share out the stream if you could. It would help us out greatly. How are you doing, Pat? What have you been doing for this last week?
Dead on the inside as always. No, it's been... Oh man, how was I feel this week? It's been interesting. It's been really busy. We had like 2 interviews.
Yes.
In like the last week, so that was interesting.
I have not slept well for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, I've been so busy. I'm so bummed. I was supposed to do a Warhammer game with somebody on Saturday, and literally we've been planning it for the last like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But every Saturday something comes up, so I have to message her and be like, "I'm sorry, I can't do it. I actually have a podcast I'm doing tomorrow morning for Spirit Hunters about Dragon Ball." So, yeah, one thing after another, and I forgot about that. We scheduled it like a month ago, and it slipped my mind. I'm like, I am so sorry. And then I have like I have a baby shower I'm going to tomorrow, which I'm going to be there all day. And by all day, I mean till like 3 in the morning probably. And I will not be any fit to do anything. And it's funny because we actually almost had something else scheduled on that Saturday too, right?
Yeah, we're I went ahead and booked with him for the following Saturday. So yeah, that'll be great, and he was totally fine with it. So that'll be great.
That works. I just think it's just really funny that everything's like coming at us like, oh my god,
yeah,
please.
Well, yeah,
please,
and I'm asking myself, I'm like, what? Where was all of this last year or the year before when we were busting our asses?
We were just talking about music for half the cast.
I know.
It's like, God, please. Why?
Well, we both got
Please,
some pickups here.
Yep.
These are the 8-bit DOE through M30s, but
I
in
like
the
how
Saturn.
both of ours are keying the same way.
Yeah, right, with the one button keyed out.
They actually removed that button on the controller. There actually is no A button. No, not retrobit. I am 8-bit DOE. Cancel them for removing the A button from the controller. They need to be canceled for that. No, but no, I actually been using it and I really, really like it. Like, I don't know, maybe it's me, but the texture of the controller feels like mad sick. Like, is it just
Compatible
me?
for Switch, Mac OS, Windows, Steam, Android, and Raspberry Pi. It also works great with the Blue Retro. Works great with the Saturn via the Blue Retro adapter that you can get from Humble Bazooka. Should be going live on that. So yeah, so well, you're supposed to.
One of these days.
Yeah, he's supposed to send you one. He probably is just super busy because he's trying to get the new one's actually out.
I'm only playing. I'm just worried it got lost in the mail and I can't find it. That would make me super depressed.
I like the back. It feels really good. Like, you know.
Well, okay. I thought your back had something on the bottom. Yeah. Well, honestly, I love the texture. Like, I took it out and I touched it and I was like, I really love the feel of the texture on that. Like, is it just me, Dave? Or?
It is different. Yeah, no, it's good. The plastic feels quality. The D-pad feels good. Somebody was telling me they had problems with the earlier D-pads on the M30. I don't know, but this feels great.
It felt really nice to me.
I haven't put it to like the test of like playing several 2D fighters and going really hard on it, but I probably will. And the top buttons don't feel like Saturn.
Tom Fun says I should lick the controller. Do you think I should do it, Dave?
Here's how the top buttons kind
I'm
of
gonna
feel.
do it anyways.
And these buttons?
No taste. Lickable controller, I guess. It didn't make me vomit, so 10 out of 10.
Yeah, so easy pairing, and there's like a little guide on the back of the controller that tells you what button presses to put it into like switch mode or direct input, X input, Mac OS. So that's cool.
Yeah, there's actually a fun fact about the controller. When you get it and you hook it up to your Saturn, you need to set it into the D-pad mode because the D-pad's not going to work because it's set as an analog stick. You set it to D-pad mode, I think it's starting up, and then you need to set it in switch mode. So there's a manual here that let me see, switch mode. When you want to put it in switch mode, you press and hold the Y and the start button to turn the controller for the first time.
Yeah.
So yeah, you would hit the start button and then and Y, and then you hit the start and D-pad up to set it to analog mode. So that's such it, because if you play it on the regular X input mode, the A button and B button are swapped. But if you do it on the switch mode, it will set it to the proper buttons. I still had some issues with the aligned buttons. Maybe it's a binding thing, but like I usually my test is Street Fighter Alpha 2. And for some reason the buttons were kind of weird on that. Maybe that was just me. Did you have any issues with the button binding, Dave? Or
no, because I took your advice before I even. I took both yours and Humble Bazooka's advice.
Well, I did that too, but even with the Switch thing, the buttons were kind of weirded out.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't experience
it. Or...
The only thing I've played it with is Sonic Mania and Shredder's Revenge. Like I was playing it.
Oh, you didn't play it on the Saturn?
No. I thought you just said Switch. The only Switch games I played it with.
In Switch mode on the Saturn. Sorry.
Okay, just hear me out. So on the Switch, the only two games I tested with it were the Brawlers, it was Shredder's Revenge and Sonic Mania. On the Saturn, I put it in analog, or I put it in digital mode, not left stick mode. I put it like you said, and it seemed to work fine.
Yeah.
Then again, I didn't play that much stuff. I was just like testing it out cursory, and it seemed to work great. So I don't know. And right now it's like flashing at me because I pressed the home button, but
it's yelling at us.
Anyway, it's got USB-C. I like it. I've been really lucky with the latest revision of Retrobit controllers, but again, those are 2.4 gigahertz. The ones that I got, I didn't get the Bluetooth ones. I got the 2.4 gigahertz, and
I still need to send you it. I can send you the Bluetooth one if you want.
But this is Bluetooth,
like 3 of them.
And it works great with It's Bluetooth and it works great. Well, if you've got 3 of them, send me one.
I will.
Okay.
I will send you one. You know what? Hold on a second. Well, you talk. I'll get it.
Okay, so this does work great with. This works great with the Humble Bazooka adapter on the Saturn, and I haven't noticed any issues at all. And just a side note, the issues that I did notice in Dropout previously on the article that I wrote, that really only has to do with the analog mode. Okay, like that's only with the analog mode, and pretty much only notice it on nights. But when it comes to like the digital side, just using it like a Saturn pad, it's the receiver works amazing. With both with like the King Kong or Wireless Pro Zen Pro controller, and this in digital mode, in regular digital pad mode, it works absolutely flawless. And they're still working on the analog mode because it's a prototype, or it's a demo.
Sorry.
unit.
Yeah, I lied. We only have the I only have this one left because
Oh, no worries.
we gave the other two away as giveaways. But
Well, never mind
Yeah, I'll
then.
send that to you if you want. Huh?
The Genesis one? That's
Yeah.
okay. I'm not a big fan of the 6-button controller.
It's
You
like,
people are
I'd
gonna
rather
like
not.
burn me alive, but I like the feel of the. I really like the feel of the 3-button controller on the Genesis. And I
Yeah.
never really did like the bean shaped like 6-button Genesis pads. So they do have M30s for that they've been selling for like the Genesis for a while. So
Yeah.
I could use this on the Genesis too.
Yeah,
Anyway,
honestly, I really enjoy this controller. Like, I don't mean like 8-bit's good, but I kind of prefer this a little bit more. Mm-hmm. The button binding I'm gonna work with. I'm gonna work on that. I'll see what's going on with it. But overall, I love the feel of it. It felt nice. It played good. So yeah, highly recommended if you want
James
to play.
says he can fill in for you while you're on the pan. I mean, James,
Is
if you
that
want to
British
come in,
terms for toilet?
if you come into our Discord, if you come into the Discord chat, feel free.
Yeah, I think we need to unmute.
Open invitation.
Oh, Derek's mute. Okay, he's good.
Okay, so yeah, that's updates really. I mean, other than all of the stuff that we've been doing this week, which we're going to talk about anyway. We had an interview with a dude from NPR. That was kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah, we're gonna be on All Things Considered, people. Check us out
Shiro's
on
gonna
NPR.
be on
All Things Considered.
Considered. No,
No,
yeah, I
just
mean, what was it? Vincent. It was what's his last name? Vincent Acovino. He's done a bunch of really cool articles on NPR. But he reached out to us to kind of get the scoop on everything that's happened with the documents and then the Irimajiri stuff and everything like that. So that's going to be really interesting to see what kind of article he writes up. But it was fun just doing that interview. It kind of helped solidify all the details for us as well, because I had to like make massive notes for that.
Yeah. We also did one on Saturday. Should we talk? I think we talk about that one, right?
We're talking about with James and
The
Dan.
last Saturday. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we stayed up late, really late, so that we could do
They're
a
even
cast.
roasting me like, oh, it looks like Pat's falling asleep there.
So we could do a cast with the Sega guys, and it was
I have all
fun.
my
It
energy.
was really fun. It was a lot of fun. I mean, those guys are excellent, both James and Dan, and we had a blast. I mean, it was very informal, but I mean, we did go over the documents and stuff like that and talk Sega and stuff like that. But I mean, there were a lot of laughs, and those guys are great. I'm hoping that we can do that more regularly, maybe once a quarter, maybe even more often than that, but basically continue
Every
to do
week.
collaborations and stuff like that, because
Yeah.
definitely
They're a lot of fun. I think we have a lot of good chemistry with them, and I think we're on the same sort of I guess I'm trying to think of the word of it. We're on the same sort of approach to how we like doing our shows.
sure.
So I think and we cover the same inspiration in a way.
Yeah, I mean, we're both Western Sega fans. It's just they're on that side of the water, and we're on
West.
this side. Yeah.
And we're this side of the West. There's a lot of West sides going. West Side.
Anyway,
But no,
it's gonna be
yeah.
great. Believe that. So that was us as guests on their cast. So that'll be posted, I think, a Monday from now or 2 Mondays from now. I forget what they said, but anyway, it'll be posted and it'll
Some
be lots of
Monday.
fun. And we'll go ahead and cross
It'll be a
post it
Monday
when it
in
happens.
History Sunday.
Oh, Knight disagreeing with me again. He never liked the 3-button Genesis controller. I think Knight jokingly said that he never agrees with me on anything, and that's just one more thing you
Knight
can add to the
secretly
pie.
is like he wants to beat you up.
But I mean, I don't know what to say. I just absolutely love I have big hands, and I like the Genesis 3-button controller. So yeah, if only they made it with 6 buttons. But I think there's a company out there that has done that, right? They've made like a 3-button shaped controller with 6 buttons. I forget. Anyway, all right. You know what?
Yeah.
We should get right on into the news, and I'm gonna start by having Dan unmute and go
Dan the
ahead
man.
and take us through the details on this Knights mod, so that
Sure.
yeah, we can get caught up.
Dan the man.
Sure. So there's a modder named Cologne D, I think you pronounce his name, who has modded the PC version of Nights into Dreams to increase its frame rate from 30 to 60 frames per second and to improve its controls. Now, this Cologne D, I guess, hadn't even played Knights at all. He had never encountered Knights until a few months ago. And I guess he fell in love with it. He went back and played the original Saturn version. He's played the PC version. And that's when he realized that they felt different. They control differently. And he's not the first one to realize this. The PC version is based on the PS2, kind of a remake of Nights into Dreams that only came out in Japan. And I guess they made some, and then they put it out on like the Xbox 360 and the PS3 before bringing it to the PC. And so in those iterations of Nights, it's had some improvements, like they made the graphics look a little better than the original Saturn version, of course, and they added widescreen, that sort of thing. But I guess none of them have ever run at 60 frames per second like the original Saturn version does. And I guess the analog mode doesn't really work well in the PC version, or not really at all. It's janky. And so this Cologne D noticed that, so he started poking around with the code, trying to figure out how to make it feel more like the original Saturn version. Malenko with more
Wing Commander is not jank. He paid me to say that it was jank last week. Now he's redacting. Okay, thanks, Malenko.
Redaction.
So yeah, you were saying.
He saw the light.
So yeah, the PC version, if I remember, when you do paraloops, it's almost like a square. Like it can't do like an actual circle.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as he was poking around with the code, Cologne D, he found that it seemed to be. Let's see. I'm looking for his own words. He said that he noticed in the replay data, he found it strange that it kept updating every frame with 2 sets of inputs. And he noticed that the amount of times the input was being checked was always a multiple of 2, which he also found strange. So he changed it to only update everything once, told the window to wait for less time between frames, and found that not only does that make the game run at 60 frames per second, and it just kind of works, but then as he kept poking around, he found out how to change the controls to actually work well with analog. So he said, I think that it doesn't quite feel like the original Saturn, but it's much, much closer. So
I think the checking every two times has something to do with specifically with the 3D control pad and how it's made. Because actually I was talking to Humble Bazooka about like the dropout, and he's been talking to Gaming and Jinkos and the dude that made Blue Retro. I forget what's the name, Pat? Help me out here. The gentleman who
John Cena.
John Cena. Okay. Oh, was it Jacques?
Isn't it Darth Cloud?
Okay, yeah. So Darth
Goes
Cloud.
by his real name and his alias, yeah.
Right, thank you, Derek. I appreciate it. So he was talking about that, and you're saying that the dropout that I'm experiencing on the analog side of things with his Humble Bazooka thing, that they were noticing that too, that it like pulls 2 times, and that it seems like it's designed that way specifically because of the 3D control pad. But of course, like every other controller that folks are using completely different technology. So that might have something to do with it, Dan, just as an insight. Yeah.
That is interesting.
That's cool. Maybe they can mod the PS2 version and make that better too. Because I imagine they just, when they ported the game, they took the source code and they just kind of like, plunked it in there, and we're like, okay, well, it works,
So the modder also made put out a few other mods just in the last week to other little weird errors that are in the PC version, like Jackie's cape was using the prototype model, so now it doesn't with this mod. You have to download different ones. There's a skip for the introductory cutscene, because I guess you can't skip it normally. You can customize the date and time to whatever you want. So if you wanted to, enjoy the Christmas Nights content, even though it's July, you can do that. And I guess the letters B and E are upside down when you, finish a run through do a lap of a level. And so she put out a fix to make them right side up. So yeah, you can download all those mods at a modding site called Game Banana. So Game Banana has
I like that.
ton of mods.
Oh, I know Game Banana. That's where I downloaded my CS mods back in the day. Oh yeah, I know Game Banana.
They are still going.
Absolutely, yeah. That's where I got all my my knife mods when I want to get the knife from CS. That's so. I guess for people that know in Counter Strike 1.6, the knife was held like this, like upwards, like a blade going up that way. It's like this, but in and then 1.5 used to be like this, the whole like doing this sort of action. So I mod it so I can do it that way because I like the CS 1.5 knife. But anyway, sorry about that tangent. It's got nostalgic for Game Banana again. Or, sorry, it was CS Banana back in the day is what it used to be.
Okay.
Well, there you go. That's the Knights mod story.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. Did we want to jump back into leaked game? Or sorry, what is it? Canceled games from
Canceled. We can. We said we were going to cover
we kind of ran.
detail.
Yeah, we kind of ran through it. We what we saw was lots of PC ports canceled.
Lots of it.
Since
lots of PC
this,
ports, lots
since
of Japanese
this,
games.
Yeah, Nick says it's over 80. It's at least 80 now. He's got to update the list on here.
Oh God. No.
Yeah. So anyway, what we were talking about, like Rig Saga, Terra Fantastica could have come to the West. It's going to come.
Tensei.
Malenko's going to bring it to the West now. Thanks, Malenko. I'm just putting on as much pressure as I can so that he can't back out. That's a lot of work. Wizardry, Zork, Destruction Derby. Yeah, these were all the PAL games.
Right, Dave.
Say what now?
You didn't say Destruction Derby, right?
Destruction Derby. That's right. Okay,
every time they say it,
Alien Hive, which we think is the Star Wars demo that we got, but we're not sure. Weird name. Alien Hive might have just been like a code name, because they didn't want people to. Because Star Wars is a big deal. So maybe they just wanted to keep it secret. Sacred Pools, of course. Criticon 2, which we don't have any artwork for. Eternal Champions, Free Runner, Into the Shadows. That was more or less Into the Shadows. I guess it was on the list. Say what?
R.I.P.
I'm thinking that, so since it was on this list, that's how folks have come to believe that it was going to be on Saturn, because Christian Larson said that it never touched the Saturn. It was really just a PC demo, like a Windows 95 or DOS PC demo that they would have ported to the Saturn, but they might have had trouble with that because it was pretty advanced. But I mean, they never even started because their troubles started first. Jack Nicklaus Golf, Jumper. Let me see here.
I prefer Jack Nicholson Golf, to be honest.
I'm trying to pick up from where we left off, and I think we had already done all this.
The Japanese games
Roach
did we
Racing.
cover those?
Yeah, we talked about Roach Racing because that was like that was mentioned a lot in the Netlink stuff. They wanted it to be kind of like a head-to-head Netlink racing game, but again,
head-to-head,
all we have is this screen right here that showed up in like a demo disc, like a video reel, and it was just like titles at the very end of things that are coming. Sonic Extreme, of course, never came. Speed Freak, US Gold, probably better than it didn't come.
Yeah, US Gold is no.
You can dip a turd in gold, but that doesn't
make it American.
Make it not a turd. Supercross, Acclaim. Squid, Acclaim. Mutant Chronicles, The Tick. Let's see, Triple Play 96. So these are screens of games that came to Genesis, I guess, and we're maybe going to get ports to Saturn. Vector
maybe there
Man
might be even
3.
New titles. Like know how the Pebble Beach from Genesis to Saturn got a facelift. Maybe it's one of those things. Vector Man, R.I.P. Man.
8-bit SNK boy says Destruction Derby. Derby.
I prefer Darby, D-A-R-B-Y.
Yeah. Let's see. Shenmue, Saturn Shenmue.
Shenmue.
We'll be talking about that one until we're dead, unless something comes to light. It's out there. I guarantee.
I like the according to the sources close to Pandemonium. That's funny.
According to sources close. Yeah.
I know that's funny. He told us about that as well.
Yeah. Virtual Cop 3, Virtua Fighter 3, via expansion peripheral.
And then Virtual on Ontario Tangram
on Ontario, Canada.
Ontario, Canada.
Or
Tangram.
Oratorio. Yeah, or for some reason it looks like
Tangram.
Ontario.
That's what I always called it.
I know, right? Werewolf.
It's the Canadian version.
Mysterious Code Names, Absolute Doom, Good Times Interactive.
What's that
Daytona
thing supposed
Remix.
to be in the chat with David Zane? Is that DVD or I can't even read
Pimp.
it.
Pimp.
Oh, Pimp. Oh, okay. Sorry, my eyes are kind of messed up. I need to go to the eye doctor.
Let's see. Daytona Remix. I think it would be Championship Circuit Edition. I think, but that's what we speculate.
CCE.
Soccer, just soccer. Let's see. The Show, Virgin Interactive. Our best guess is some kind of baseball game, Grand Slam.
Derby.
Virtua Fighter 2 Remix. I don't know. I kind of think Fighters Mega Mix makes the most sense, but maybe.
Yeah, that's probably what it was supposed to be.
WWF 5 Acclaim. It might be WWF In Your House. And then Umemi
WWF
3.
5 stands for the amount of money that the WWF had back in the day. A whole $5.
Umemi 3 would be the Umemi Yakata no Tobira, whatever. Umemi Mansion. Umemi Mystery Mansion.
You need to play that one.
It's okay. It's a walking
Get it
sim.
translated.
No, you can play it. It's Mansion of Hidden Souls on the Saturn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but this would be Umemi 3, which I don't think we ever.
Is that supposed to be TraynoCo?
No. So, wait, the third game in the series releases TraynoCo. How is that the third game in this? Oh, okay, yeah, it is TraynoCo. If we're counting the Sega CD, which is the first, and then we're counting Mansion of Hidden Souls, which is the second, yeah, this would be TraynoCo.
Yeah, I figured it would be, because if you're counting the Sega CD one, I thought that's what they meant, because it's technically the third
no publisher
one, but,
listed. So, Atlas ended up publishing it as Lunacy in North America. Okay, so yeah, a bunch of other cancel PC. This is the wrap up. Anyway, appreciate Nick doing this write up, and yeah, I mean, he found these are all the named games. Some had more description, and then some were just like literally a word, but it was in the document. So SOA made a lot of assumptions, though. It seemed like they made a lot of assumptions about certain games that were gonna just be remixed or be released altogether. Like that, they'll make this game, right? We're sure of it. The Sega of Japan will make it and give it to us.
And so Shadows is definitely coming out.
Exactly.
R.I.P.
So Panda, I'm not gonna go way into this, but Dan,
go watch the stream.
Yeah, go watch the stream. It's if you have 3 hours to spare and you really want a granular page by page, because it's page by page. Okay, so if you're interested in these documents and you've listened to like the Reader's Digest versions and you want like a more granular view of everything, but you don't like reading, I mean, just watch his stream and he'll take you through it, and you can just take notes like you're in college. But yeah, no, Panda did a great stream. There was a kind of an ASMR quality to it, because he was drinking his tea and flipping pages.
Then Into the Shadows got canceled.
So definitely check out Panda's stream if you're interested in deep diving this document. Kind of out of order here, because then Friday hit and we did SHIRO Show. So last Friday we did SHIRO Show.
That's just the thing for SHIRO Show.
This is just okay. So yeah, if you missed last Friday's SHIRO Show and you want to listen to it on your way to work or whatever, it's uploaded. Pat and I and Danthrax went through the documents, kind of talked about our big takeaways.
Really deceptive. I made it deceptive. I mean, it seemed like it was a whole thing of us reading it live, but we just went through a bunch of news articles. But technically we did, so I guess we just double dipped on that.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with misrepresentation in the entertainment industry. I mean, just ask all the actors in Hollywood that are striking right now how used to they are for that.
So, yeah, these are kind of out of order. I mean, granted, we published Editor's Corner on Tuesday, but actually we recorded it over the weekend before we found out about the Irimajiri stuff. So Nick and I sat down for a little over an hour. Actually, the morning after we recorded with the Sega guys, so I was completely burnt. But we talked about the document. We talked about Nick's big takeaways. It's really good. So like if you have like an hour and a half and you just want to know the basics about the document leak, we pretty much went through everything. and
Go through it.
it's kind of like a listener's digest, if you will, on the latest editor's corner. And then of course when I got to work on Monday, this hit, and wow, like I want to know. I kind of want to ask Dan, like, so I haven't heard anything from you, Dan. Well, no, that's right. You did kind of comment on it in the website discussion, right? But I wanted to know, Dan, what were your thoughts on the whole Irimajiri lecture translation?
So I guess kind of tangentially related. I think it's interesting that this got translated at this time by MD Shock, and I wonder if he intentionally like saw all these documents leaking and then thought, hey, I know that the former Sega president Irimajiri did a lecture last year. I wonder what he said. I should go back and translate it, and then went ahead and did this. I don't know if that's the case. The timing is strange, but I mean,
good motivation.
He does give good extra insight here, because of course Irimajiri took over for Sega just 4 months, 3 or 4 months after all these documents that leaked out were made. He took over in July of 1996, along with Bernie Stolar. Like technically Irimajiri was on top, and Bernie Stolar was just in charge of product development. I was like the vice president right under him.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, he says, he gives some interesting insight on how, the Saturn was initially being developed. Just like kind of we sort of knew before that like the 3D wasn't a last minute addition. They always were planning on doing 3D.
Right.
Just with about a year before they actually went to market, they added the second CPU, the second SH2 processor. When they saw what the PlayStation's specs were going to be, and they realized, oh, we're not going to be able to really keep up with that thing with what we've got, but it's too late in the game. Even though it's a whole year out, it's still too late in the game to be totally redesigning the motherboard and how it works. So they just added a second processor, which I wonder if that's why, the two processors are fighting over the same bus to talk to the RAM, is because they design it to like add more bus throughput. They had to just put CPUs the same bus that was already,
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And that's why Suzuki even went on record saying that if you were a god of a programmer, you could hope to get like 1.5 times the power you would never hope to actually harness both chips, but you'd maybe get 1.5 times out of it, just because of the bus contention issues, because the bus wasn't designed for the two chips in the first place. And since we're talking about this, I just want to go on record again and say that for years I labored under the delusion that it was the second VDP, that it was a second VDP or VDP1 to be specific, because of some misinformation, because the most prominent information, or the only information that just kept getting regurgitated that was available, was the information from Edge and Next Generation from all the way back in the day. They interviewed quote unquote Sega employee. So we don't even know who they interviewed, but they interviewed someone internally at Sega, and they reported, like, quite frankly, that they added a second VDP, video display processor, or GPU, whatever you want to call it. We call it GPU now, but back then they basically called it video display. But essentially, and I was talking to Knight, and I was talking to Trekkies. We were looking at the documentation, the big fat stack of documentation that they send over to the Americans in terms of like the chipset and stuff like that. And when you look at the dates on it, when you look at the dates, and then you also look at what has been added and everything, it's like you could extrapolate that to mean that it was a VDP that was added. And I think that's exactly what Edge probably did back in the day, because of the difficulty in things getting lost in translation or whatever. I think that they kind of made certain conclusions and made certain assumptions based on those documents and the report with the Sega employee. But we have it on record from Irimajiri, from Hideki Sato and from Hitachi themselves that it was actually a second CPU that was added. Now, I know that that's kind of semantic and it's kind of like splitting hairs. Some people out there will claim that it's splitting hairs. But I mean...
I wouldn't. I mean, a GPU specifically used for graphics processing, the CPU just used for,
it's just
generalized data,
It's just good for us to get the information correct and move forward with the correct information, and instead of continuing to spin and proliferate the same wrong information, especially because there's developers out there who are actually attempting to harness the power of the machine and come to grips with everything that it can do. And it's just like that kind of information, it doesn't help, I
still think my favorite misinformation is the whole, they bolted on 3D to it. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, like that just, I think anybody who has any kind of proximity to PCB fabrication or electronic engineering knows that that's just not how things work. You don't just bolt any kind of CPU or IC on at the last minute and just expect it to work. I mean, there is a lot of rework. There's a lot of troubleshooting. There's a lot of debugging that goes into
lots of barge wires.
Yeah. So I mean,
lots of barge wires.
That said, the first launch model of the Saturn was quite a mess. Like, I mean, I think folks who have one of those and they've tried to take it apart will notice that there's a lot more wires and there's a lot more, like, you got to be really careful when you're taking those apart because they're just an absolute cluster F inside. And they did work for a couple years to kind of streamline it down to a much more economical design so that they could afford those price cuts. Constant price cuts that were needed in order to compete with Sony. But I mean, yeah, no, the original board was just an absolute ugly mess. And but anyway, that is one thing that I didn't mean to interrupt Dan. I didn't mean to completely steal the floor from you, Dan. I just meant to say, yeah, we should just put a nail in this and let it die. This whole what is it? This misinformation, exactly.
Yeah.
And did you mention the indecisive, like the fact that they were kind of divided on 3D?
No, I guess that wasn't as mind-blowing to me. I think there are other things I haven't gotten to that are more interesting in the article. So if you want to mention it real quick,
I want to mention it because it's not that big of a deal. So it's one of the first things that he says, and it's one of those things where it's it's often argued that the Saturn was a 2D powerhouse, or it was meant to be a 2D machine, or it was meant to be a 3D machine. I wouldn't say that it was one or the other, because what I think is obvious by what he's saying is that they were pretty much there were several people within Sega that couldn't really agree on what they wanted it to be, so a lot of folks wanted to really focus on 3D where others were divided and thought that they should focus more on 2D. The fact is that it always was able to calculate 3D polygons. And even as a 3D machine, I think we all know and love the fact that the Saturn is pushing a ton of sprites and manipulating them and warping them in order to create 3D graphics. So, I mean, even at the end of the day, when it's doing 3D calculations, maths in the SH2s, but I mean, it's drawing them to the screen using sprites, right? So it is a very, very powerful 2D machine. And in fact, that VDP-1 can draw sprites so fast, they needed two SH2s to be able to even do the math to keep up, because I don't think that those could spit out 3D calculations fast enough for the VDP-1,
spitting sprites out.
It is. Saturn is a very, very capable 2D machine, and even when it's doing 3D, it's just amazing that it's actually using,
especially if you know what you're doing with it. I mean,
blitted sprites. But anyway, so just I'll move along and let you pick up. I
think James is here to cause some trouble.
So
okay,
I saw Cerulean in chat a couple minutes ago say this is why it's good to get both sides of the story, and is especially true in this next bit of translated speech here about how the Saturn could have launched in the US alongside Japan, but Sega of America insisted on the 32X. Now, we have both sides of the story on this now. There are Americans who are supposedly in the room at CES Winter 1994 on a phone call with Sega of Japan, who said, yeah, Sega of Japan was worried about competing with the Jaguar, the Atari Jaguar, and so they wanted us to, get something out that year, and so we designed on a napkin at CES the 32X, and then we, got it out there by the end of the year. Now, here's former Sega of America president Irimajiri saying that they originally wanted the Saturn to launch worldwide, or at least, I guess, in North America alongside Japan. Maybe Europe would have still come a little later because of stock issues. But they wanted to launch it in both territories at once at the end of 1994, that early. But Sega of America were the ones who insisted that they wanted to hold off on the Saturn by at least a year. Because I guess they felt like they were just riding that Sega Genesis gravy train too much. They didn't want to get off the ride.
They didn't. No, I mean, yeah. If it's like I was saying
Even
on
the worse. Clearly, that's okay.
Yeah, all I was saying is that I think I was saying before on the thing that I think that it was kind of, I think they were trying to do a bet, because I think there's nothing, the console, a lot of people like are looking in hindsight, but you have to realize that it was like the second generation of console at that point that really has that whole had that whole history of like the cycle of go to new consoles and like discontinue the old ones. I think Sega was trying to see if they could keep both those going simultaneously, and it was a bet. Like it wasn't good or bad if you think about it. It just was a bet, and they fell flat on it.
I mean, it was a choice that they made. Yeah,
exactly.
I think the Genesis was selling amazing until it wasn't. You know what I mean? Like it was one of those things where, and I remember this vividly from back in the day, that it was like things just turned a corner with kids seeing stuff like Daytona in the arcade. When you saw Virtua Fighter, Virtua Racing, and then later Daytona in the arcade, it just kind of made you not really care that much about 16-bit in general anymore. You know what I mean? It wasn't just the Genesis, it was the SNES as well. Like they scrambled to use like the SVP, they scrambled to create pre-rendered graphics in games like Donkey Kong Country to try to kind of like get get a couple years more out of those consoles. But again, like even as a kid, I literally didn't care about 16-bit anymore. So I was just like looking forward. And I think that a lot of America didn't care to continue buying. You either had already bought a 16-bit console, whether it was a Genesis or an SNES or maybe a TurboGrafx. But now that you knew that the new 32-bit consoles were coming, you weren't really looking at picking up a Genesis so late in its life. You know what I mean? So I think
more games for
I
it.
think that's what they didn't really count on, is they maybe at that time of that meeting, things still looked okay, but it was like they were just about to just completely fall out, and then they were going to have like a ton of stock in the warehouse and no orders, because as soon as everyone learned that the Saturn was coming and that it was going to launch in Japan and that it was going to have Virtua Fighter, it was just like, forget it. Nobody wanted to invest in a console that was already from 1989. That would make it how many years old? Well, at least 5 years old.
Yeah,
so
it's fairly old in those terms. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like that's what they didn't count on. Maybe they just thought, oh yeah, we'll just continue to sell these successfully for another year, but that's just not what happened. So anyway, go ahead, Dan. Again, I'm not trying to cut you off. I'm just trying to like interject here and there.
You're the faces on the screen, so.
But I mean, I appreciate, because I want to get you in on this conversation. Another thing that and James, you're free to unmute if you want, and no,
James actually isn't allowed to. I've decided he's not allowed to speak on the show.
Well, one thing I just want to say, kind of as an interjection, is that if we're doubting at all Irimajiri's truthfulness in this
these comments,
this was not an interview. He was not being grilled. This was a business lecture for businessmen. So there's no the stakes aren't very high. I'm just saying the
business.
stakes aren't very high. He's just literally trying to deliver. He had no reason. Sorry, Dan.
I said, yeah, he had no reason to lie.
Right. Or color the truth at all. You know what I mean? Like, because again, he's just speaking to Japanese businessmen and stuff like that. You know, he probably had no idea that some game community would come along and translate the lecture.
Like, oh, tell me all about the systems.
Look what we got.
I want to know about what happened with the 32X.
So anyway, I'm just saying, like, I realized that it, because one of the things that people usually will do, the first thing they'll say is, oh, well, this is like 30 years old. They can't possibly remember correctly, right? You know? And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, considering that this was their job and they probably were in a lot of meetings and you know, they probably remember better than you could remember things from 30 years ago. But
especially if you're young,
yeah. So anyway,
I want to hear what James has to say. He came all the way here from England. Let's see, what's your thoughts, hates?
Well, they just released a podcast today, I believe, or yesterday, that goes over the Irimajiri lecture. So that's a good one. You guys should definitely listen to. But yeah, I mean, he's in the live stream chat, so if he's able to talk, he can. Otherwise, we'll just keep plugging away.
Yeah, so
England.
England.
I know I can't speak properly. Leave me alone, Trevo.
So the next bit was that's translated here is that Irimajiri said that Sega of America was forced to keep massive inventory in warehouses and lost a fortune on unsold returns. Now, I mean, this isn't mind-blowing to us a week after getting all this confirmed in the documents, but what's great is that all of this is confirmed in the leaked documents we just got a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
It's like a good companion piece, really.
Yeah, it's like an overlay. You overlay it and it's like, wow, then it's like really profound.
Wow, these guys really did do bad at their jobs. God damn.
Well, what's interesting here is that, you know, they knew. Japan knew. At least maybe not right away as it was happening, but clearly, eventually, by 1996, they did find out that they did realize that Sega of America had all this unsold stock. And of course, unsold stock is sitting in warehouses, and that costs you money because you have to pay for the space in warehouses. And anything that's sitting in a warehouse isn't getting sold. So you're just losing money, hand over fist. And that directly resulted in them, in Irimajiri stepping in to take over Sega of America, and for them to bring in Bernie Stoller from Sony.
Brings them to the wing. They like raise him on the like, you know, like the like Darth Vader just rides him on the pallet, just as he's raising up, and it's like, fix the Saturn.
Here's the
fix the books, not cooking way, but you know.
Here's the ironic thing:
cook the books, but by fixing them.
This is how Tom won the West. Like when you think about it, like Nakayama hired Tom to gain the market share, you know, gain the majority market share, make Genesis a success. Tom had retail connections, of course, and this was like the price to play. You know, that these big retailers were probably thinking like, well, you're nowhere near as big as Nintendo, you know, but you want to be as prominent as Nintendo. You want us to take a chance on you and give you the same kind of, you know, eminent shelf space that we give Nintendo and everything. What do we get out of it? How can you promise us that we're not going to lose big on this? And so Tom has to essentially, it's almost like the crossroads, like selling your soul, because he basically has to write an incredibly risky deal in order to deal with them. And that is, you know, I will promise to keep this much in overstock, and I will buy back everything that you don't sell. So now they've got their collateral, or they've got their insurance, you know, against Sega's failure. And at the beginning, it seems fine, you know, because it's working. But the folks in Japan are like, wow, that's really risky, and we would never do things like that in Japan, you know. That's just not. But okay, Tom, you know what you're doing. You know, I'm not going to question. Exactly. I'm not going to question your methods, because you seem to get results. You get results, right? And again. And, you know, yeah,
you could also argue that, like, okay, it's risky and seems crazy to allow retailers to just, you know, force you to buy your stock back from them. But you could say if Sega did a better job of making people want these games and these systems, then they wouldn't have had as many to sell back in the first place, you know?
Yeah, and the documents
Exactly.
actually, the documents, the leaked documents, not just the Irimajiri lecture, but the leaked documents actually refer to sellback, like returns, merchandise returns, and they also refer to markdowns. Like anytime a big retailer like Toys R Us puts a bunch of Panzer Dragoon Sagas in a bin for $10, they charge the consumer $10, but then they charge Sega for the difference. You know what I mean? So it's like that way Sega, it's better to do that. So anytime you saw those like steep discounts, Sega would have to pay for part of that, but that's better than having to pay for all of it and have all the merchandise returned and turn up in a warehouse. Instead, they could get it out to consumers and they split the tab essentially. But yeah, those like really, really steep markdowns for like retailers like Toys R Us and Walmart wouldn't reflect on their ledger. It would reflect on Sega's. So yeah, it was, but I mean, it's a compromise versus, you know, just completely returning a bunch of slabs of these things.
Well, I guess if you really can quote a famous band from the 90s, I guess they did it the wrong way.
Oh my God. I was just listening to that song.
It's a good ass album. I mean, it sucks that there was the last one. It was good.
Okay. So yeah,
up to what I think is probably the biggest bombshell in all of this, at least from a drama perspective. And it's the fact that, you know, the repercussion for all of this unsold stock resulting in a ton of debt for Sega of America was that Tom Kalinske was essentially fired. Now, the story has always been that Tom Kalinske turned in his resignation, that he chose to leave Sega. And the narrative is, well, he saw the writing on the wall. Things weren't going well for Saturn. Things weren't going well for the Genesis. The 32X bombed. He saw the writing on the wall. So he left to go to greener pastures.
Right.
It was his choice. And here's Irimajiri saying directly, Tom Kalinske was asked to step down.
Yeah. He didn't
restructuring and worked to make the company healthy.
Yeah.
They literally took him out the back with the shotgun and, put that old yeller.
Yeah. There goes Pat.
Yeah, there goes Pat. Sorry.
The joke was too explicit to be shown on screen. Too
explicit.
We played you off.
I mean, so James is in chat. He said, you're free to speak, James, if you can. Is he unmuted?
No.
Hello.
There you are.
Oh, James.
How's things, guys?
Good. It's good. They're good. Yeah, no, we're just going over the Irimajiri lecture, and I listened to your guys' cast. It was great, as usual. Any bits? What are your most important pieces that you'd like to share from all of this?
I mean, the bit that you're getting to just now, I think Dan called that the smoking gun, or not so much the smoking gun, but the gun that was used. I mean, as you were alluding to there, you know, this story has always been that, you know, Tom Kalinske just got fed up with his control being taken away by Japan and decided, you know, I've had enough, I'm out of here. But to then see that Irimajiri says that, you know, Tom was given a year to resize the company and, you know, it wasn't going to plan. So he was asked to step down with Irimajiri taking over, you know, in both Japan and America. So that was huge. I mean, there's been so much from these leaks, and then the timing of this translated interview, which was from October last year.
Right.
So
not interview though. It wasn't a translated interview. Lecture.
It was a business lecture seminar. Yeah. So as you said earlier on in the stream, there, it's like he had no reason to embellish anything. He's just sitting there talking to, you know, maybe like student businessmen or people wanting to learn about business. So he's got no reason to embellish anything or kind of make anything up. So, yeah.
He wasn't answering questions. You know, he was just preparing slides and running through. Yeah.
It was a shit talk lecture.
It's like war stories, basically, like talking about his time in the trenches and stuff like that. But, Trekkie's sent me a message, and I think that it is worth saying. When it comes to the Genesis not selling all of a sudden, like we were talking about, like the Genesis was doing amazing. We all knew that. It gained 51 arguably maybe more than that percent of the market share, but it just stopped selling when the 32-bit generation and 3D polygons hit. And it wasn't just bad games, it was all games. They had over 300,000 copies of Sonic 3 was 100,000, and Sonic and Knuckles was 200,000.
Oh.
Sonic 3 was 100,000, and Sonic and Knuckles was over 200,000 in stock. They weren't selling, and those were phenomenal games. I mean, I bought them full price from Kmart, so it's like there were folks out there buying them, but they just had a ton of overstock. And
there's a reason why it's so cheap on eBay to get them nowadays.
It's just like I feel like they reached a market saturation where it was like the folks who were gonna get it got it, or they were just diehard Nintendo fans. And remember, back then you kind of chose. It's so easy to forget this, but you kind of chose a console and stuck with it back then. It was like you were either a Nintendo kid or a Genesis kid. Nowadays, I have 8 consoles right in front of me right now, and then a bunch in my house, so it's like we all own multiple consoles, and it does, you can have a PlayStation 5 and an Xbox and a Switch, whatever. But back then it was just a completely different time, and you either had an SNES or you had a Genesis. And so
exactly, and we were kids back then. We couldn't afford getting 2 consoles like we can now.
Yeah, and if you had a Genesis,
like making a PC and a PS5.
Martin sold his Mega Drive to get an SNES. I'm sorry.
Xbox right in the trash.
But yeah, I mean, so people either had it, the market had reached saturation, or the folks who were on the fence who might be looking at getting a new console were not going to jump into the 16-bit era when the 32-bit era was like literally already there. Granted, unaffordable in the form of the 3DO for many folks, but quite affordable if you were interested in getting a Jaguar. And if you're interested in waiting just a little bit, there's also the Saturn. Now, one of the arguments that folks make immediately when they read this sentence about Sega of Japan wanting to launch Saturn simultaneously, which is what game companies do nowadays, you know what I mean, pretty much. But they wanted to launch the Saturn simultaneously in America and in Japan. The first thing they say is, "Oh yeah, there's no way that it would have been ready. There's no way it would have had enough games." I don't necessarily disagree. That statement is true, but let's just imagine that 32X never even happened. Let's imagine that when they originally came to Sega of America with the idea of the Saturn and said, "This is going to be our next console. We're working on it right now. We're planning on putting it out in November." That if Sega of America at that time had just gotten on board and said, "Okay, what do you want us to do? So you want us to hire Tiger teams? You want them to start working right now? We'll hit the ground running." Like, imagine if they had not pushed back and said, "Okay, we want to hold on to the Genesis." Imagine if they had just gotten on board and started working hard to make it happen. They could have had a launch. I'm not saying it would have been phenomenal, but it would have been an entire year before their competition gets there. So it'd been a lot like Dreamcast. It'd been a lot like the
games that came out for the 32X in November and December of '94.
Right.
Those all could have been Saturn games easily. I mean, some of them were even made in Japan. They weren't like, U.S. Tiger Team type productions.
Exactly. And think about the limitations that they had to work with on those titles. So the 32X uses 2 Hitachi SH2s, but they have like a lower clock speed. And they can't just be like, you can't just overclock them. The Saturn uses faster SH2s. And imagine all of those games that they were working on for 32X would have had a much more room to like operate, and work smoothly if they had that beefier hardware, lower clock rate and share 16-bit bus. Oh yeah, 16-bit bus and less RAM. So yeah, there's a lot. No VDPs or sound chips either. What were you gonna say, Pat?
I was gonna post in the chat. Neo Z 1964 said he traded a Snatcher in to get a PS1. And that just hurt my bones.
God. Well, I mean, I traded a SNES with like Star Fox, Star Wars, Super Mario Kart. I had a ton of games, and I traded that in to get a PS1.
That was actually a pain.
It was a pain. I had to buy it all back. Like, I had to get my SNES back like a decade.
Imagine trying to buy your Snatcher back though.
No, exactly. That is painful. That's really painful. I'm sorry. That sucks. But anyway, the point that I think is important to make is, remember when Dreamcast came out? Now, Dreamcast, I think Pat and I were talking about this with the dude from NPR, basically. Dreamcast did almost everything right. It was an amazing console. They did so much right, but they failed on two things. All of the ill will that they generated, all of the bad juju from all of the bad decisions. There's just nothing that the Dreamcast couldn't possibly shoulder the burden from all of that.
Well, honestly, I was talking about it. I thought about the last couple of days. I think it actually was in a good place because you had like all the hype, you had all the people buying it for the sports games, but it just the PS2 it dropped, and it wasn't even like 5 months later, and they like discontinued the Dreamcast. It just was. I'm just saying, it just too much. In spite of everything that came before the Dreamcast, it still managed to like have a really positive launch. And like I say, I had people coming to me who were playing it and they were like, it has no right to be this good. Like, this is amazing. This is a Sega console. I mean, so there was that. And then there was the fact that they insisted on the Gigadisc format. Like, I really think that was a bad decision, but still remember this, the Dreamcast came out and it was uncontested for a year. And so a lot of people bought it because they were buying into the next generation a year ahead of time, right? And it was an actual good console. It wasn't like buying the Jaguar. It was like you're buying... Not to mention a lot of people that played fighting games bought it because, they can... Well, tournaments as well, because they could have, they can have a tournament and not have to lug like 5 different arcade machines or like 12 or how many of them in there. So I definitely just like get a Dreamcast. I definitely think that if the Saturn did come out in America a year before the PlayStation, a lot of folks would have bought into it because they would be buying into the next generation. And they would have Virtua Fighter, they would have Myst, which was at that time very recent hit on PC and would have been an amazing port. It was very it was a very serviceable port on the Saturn, and even had mouse support, although we wouldn't get the mouse. They should have released Pissed instead. Pissed. Yeah, right? The one John Goodman. I know that. Yeah, and you're throwing me off, Pat. Anyway, I'm just saying these are the argument. These are kind of like the hypothetical arguments. Is that it's very easy to imagine. It's very easy to imagine Saturn doing much better in the West had they just launched it. And yeah, it would have had to catch up in terms of development tools and software. But it did that in Japan too, For better or worse, it did that in Japan and it was able to catch up. So I don't know. Instead, what did happen though is the 32X. And unfortunately that's I have it gated on the actual stream, but I know you can hear the garbage truck. I hear the dump truck. Yeah, okay. Saturn costs a lot to produce. It's true. They hardly even made any money at $399. Think about it. They had to buy all of their parts from vendors. Sony, and again, I've said this so many times now, but Ken Kutaragi did tell Sato, he's like, Sato-san, I'm gonna spend you into the ground, he's like, we're gonna spend you into the ground on advertising, and I'm gonna beat you because we can fabricate everything ourselves, and you have to buy all of your parts from vendors. So I mean, that's true. Like, part you out, baby. As an electronics manufacturer, Sony had the upper hand. Oh, and they also had, of course, the leverage from all of their other corporate arms. They had the leverage from their retail relationships for years and stuff like that. So it isn't but here's the thing. Just because Saturn could have ended up in second place doesn't mean it's a failure, right? Even if Saturn had ended up in third place, it still wouldn't have been a failure if it wasn't a distant third place, like if it was just like neck and neck with Nintendo 64 or whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be a failure just because it's not selling as much as PlayStation. It's just that there could have been a lot more people in the West who bought Saturn, who invested in Saturn. What do you think, Pat? In terms of buying Saturn? No, in terms of what makes a console a failure. You know what I mean? Like Dreamcast, do we really consider it a failure? Just because... I wouldn't consider it a failure. I mean, and that by that definition, the GameCube was a failure, and the GameCube was not a failure. I mean, technically, it is a failure, but like to say, like, I wouldn't say it's a failure. It just was it it was badly timed and badly chosen. You know, it's just bad circumstances. But
who's in third place right now?
Probably Xbox.
And does that make it a failure?
Depends on what fanboy you ask.
Okay. Okay.
But no, I wouldn't say the Xbox is a failure. To be honest, though, like my only issue with Xbox is that you could just get a PC and play the exact amount of games. So it's like, why would you buy an Xbox? Like, maybe that's just me talking, or I don't know why you'd want to.
I feel like that's always kind of been the thing with Xbox. Like, ever since I can go back. Except, you'd have certain titles like Halo and stuff, but Halo got released on PC too, so it's like...
Yeah, but I mean, at least Halo had some time in the spotlight to be exclusive.
Yeah. I can't even keep up with all the comments.
There's it got heated when I started talking about Xbox being not good.
Thing.
Sorry, Dan?
Should we move on to the next item?
Yeah, sure. So anyway, smoking, Tom was asked to leave. He was given a year to restructure the company into profitability, and I think one of the things that they wanted to do was to see him axe those relationships that were toxic. The ones that were forcing them to buy back. He was like, "Yeah, we can't do that anymore. We need to be a profitable company." Year went by, it didn't happen. He was asked to leave. That's the story. That's not what we've heard.
Morning Glory.
Yeah, that's not what we've heard. I would love to get Tom back for an interview, to be honest with you. And I mean, I would go easy. I would ask these questions, but I mean, I wouldn't like try to make him feel bad about it. I would just like to.
I'm gonna go for another Michael Jackson question.
I would like him to speak to some of these things. Like it would be very interesting. We interviewed him a while ago, and I had no idea about it. Most of this stuff, so I had no idea to ask him any of this stuff. But yeah, no, it's crazy. It's not, folks have also kind of on Twitter, and other social media, there's been a general kind of mood in the air of like, can we stop playing the blame game? Can we stop, saying that this is Sega of America's fault or Sega of Japan's fault? I think that the point is there's enough fault to go all around. The company made several mistakes, and
I mean, honestly, they should have let Tom go way earlier than they did. Like they shouldn't. I would have let him go when they heard about that overstock thing.
He should have. Honestly, Irimajiri was brand new in the game industry. He didn't have any experience in the game industry, and he listened to them, and he just sat down and listened to them to their passionate, adamant story about how they needed to stick with Genesis. And I think the answer still should have been no. The answer is like, listen, we're designing a console. You guys need to sell it.
Yeah, he need to get a backbone and be like, you're doing it. I mean, it's good. There's not going to be a lot of games at launch, but I mean, we'll fix that. We have a lot of games in development, so and it's better to take the L and sell Saturns and take an L and sell 32Xs and then dump them.
Yeah.
So just my opinion, but Sega guys said Saturn was a failure, but DC wasn't. That's a hot take. I would say it's a hot take. I mean, it's kind of. To me, it seems obvious. To me, it might just be, but I think it's kind of seems like the Dreamcast was a success because of how many people bought it, how popular it was.
So are we just talking about in the West? Are we talking about in the West, or are we talking about worldwide? Because obviously Saturn wasn't anywhere close to a failure in Japan. It was an amazing success. Yeah. In the West, it still sold. It still sold, it sold a lot, but the marketing was a failure for sure. The marketing failed to communicate to consumers, and it failed in other ways. It failed in terms of what it brought over, because a lot of great games stayed in Japan, and then of course it kind of had trouble with the sports games and stuff like that. Would we call the entire console a failure? No, I don't think I would go that far. But again, it was a very. I think it's easy to say that it was a very distant third.
But yeah, if you consider the fact that the Saturn was successful in Japan but failure in the West, but the Dreamcast was a success in both Japan and the West, I would say that's pretty indicative of a success.
Mm-hmm. I don't think Dreamcast was a success in Japan, Pat.
Was it not?
I really
I always seemed like it sold pretty well in there. It was pretty popular.
Not as much as Saturn, though. No.
Saturn remains Japanese Sega fans' darling because it's a console that beat Nintendo. So, no, Dreamcast was dismal, and it wasn't as bad as it was in the UK and Europe. But I think a lot of people romanticize the Dreamcast's American launch because it had that biggest launch in entertainment history, but after everybody who wanted a Dreamcast bought one at launch, and then it fell off a cliff. I mean, that's what Peter Moore said to us as well, is that they got a lot of third-party support, and people do rightly point at all the great games that they got. But as Peter says to us, it's like, yeah, these third parties, they signed these deals, but they only signed them for like 1 or 2 games. We had nothing in the pipe for whenever we're going to E3 to do shows, and we had nothing in the pipe to show because those third-party deals had run out. There was no second or third or fourth game to come from these studios. So eventually they had to rely on, pretty much like the Saturn did, internal first-party studios. So apart from the launch period in America, which was sensational, but Dreamcast sales in Japan aren't great at all.
Yeah.
Okay,
the general sentiment, though, like,
I'll claim ignorance on that one.
I think the sentiment on Dreamcast was positive, though. Like, people didn't really have anything bad to say about it. It was really just more or less PlayStation 2's coming, and it was
too much too late, mate.
Yeah, sure, exactly. Again, you're talking about like. It's one of those like Inception things where you'd have to go back really far in order to start making changes that would resonate into the Dreamcast's lifetime. But
literally,
and again, this is
like,
all.
Don't sell this.
This
don't
is
sell
like
32X.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's fun to play the speculation game, but again, it goes nowhere because it's just a thought experiment, I guess, because. You can't really make these kind of changes now. And I mean, Sega's left in the hands of a holding company, and I think that it kind of it ends up being a chip on a lot of our shoulders, especially those of us who grew up with Sega back in their glory days, and maybe that's what fuels these kind of conversations, is because we always just think like, we know how great this company is. We know what their potential is. We know that they have the ability to be so much more than they are. But again, it's like you got to go back far to see like when it all started going wrong,
Yeah, and I guess maybe, like I said, I'm just a bias for the Dreamcast, and I'm just flooded by the success in America. So maybe, and I really don't know how well it did in Japan, but I figured it did relatively decently with its marketing campaigns and stuff. So
once the PlayStation took over, once Final Fantasy came out and the PlayStation took over Saturn in Japan, then it was like that was just it. The PlayStation was it. It rode really, really incredibly strong all the way into the PS2's release, and then everyone had to have a PS2. And of course, it even came with a DVD drive, which made just as much of a difference in Japan as it did over here. It was a no-brainer. Japan, it was a no-brainer to get the PS2. Yeah.
So I could see that. Yeah, like I said, I guess sometimes I'll just admit, and I imagine everyone on suffers, so they get a little foggy memory from the Dreamcast. Everything fogs out.
Yeah.
Hyper focus on that. So.
Well, anecdotally, I always say I sold a lot of Dreamcasts, and I did. Like, I know that you're saying that they sold well at launch and then didn't continue to sell well. For me, it was at least 1.5 to 1 3/4 of a year that I was still selling Dreamcasts pretty regularly. Then when I left, Sears and went to Circuit City, still selling them. But then once the PS2 came out, it was just like, forget it. Then they just sat on the shelf. And it just disgusted me that like with our PS2 demo, all we had was Fantavision for like weeks, and everybody was still buying the PS2 because they're like, oh well, I'll play DVDs on it now, and when games start coming, then
Devil May Cry 1, dude, I saw that demo everywhere on the PS2. It was fantastic, though. I love DMC 1, not DMC the remake, the original. Sorry.
Yeah, but you guys did say it well, James, in your talk, that Sega just didn't really see the seismic change that was going to happen in the industry, or maybe they underestimated just the amount of change that was about to happen and would continue to happen for like the next half decade. It was just an incredible amount of change, like we haven't really seen since. No. And absolutely, like, I know it sounds cliche, but I'm telling you, it cannot be understated how big of a deal 3D was and how everyone had blinders on for 3D. Like anything else was just not important. 16-bit was just immediately uncool. It wasn't like I'm not gonna go out and buy a Mega Drive when there's this Saturn on the horizon and it can do Virtua Fighter. Now I kind of think that the whole 2D Virtua Fighter on the Genesis is kind of cool. But I mean, back then I thought it was so stupid. Why would they even release that? Because I mean, who's gonna buy this? It's
no one.
Not really, actually. Okay, Dan has a point. We need to keep going, and there's several different articles that we can talk about.
We're almost out of show.
We're gonna need another show.
No, that's okay. We got some time. Driving Strikers officially goes on sale. We've done articles and covered this game before. What do we know, Dan? Any changes?
Yeah, well, it's finished. Last time we talked about it was when a demo for it came out back in October, and now it's out. It's for sale, so you can buy it right now. We've got a link in our story. Wave Game Studios is publishing for the developer Reality Jump. So right now it's $20 to get a physical copy, a disc for your Dreamcast, and that comes with a digital download file that you can then throw onto an SD card if you have an ODE or something, or you can play it in an emulator. And if you don't want a disc, you just want to buy the digital download itself, it's 15 pounds rather. It's 20 pounds for the physical copy, 15 pounds for the digital download. And when you get a physical edition, you can actually choose among the North American, European, and Japanese style of case. So that's kind of cool. Neat little.
Yeah, they fixed the frame rate quite a bit in this game. Looking at a trailer, and the frame rate. The online one is laggy, but in the single player one, the frame rate is pretty good. Like it's a lot better than when I played it.
Okay, so that video is the only one that the developers have put up on their YouTube. And it's from back in October when they released the demo. So I don't have an updated video. I just grabbed the only one we really had. I didn't want to grab like a random YouTuber's video of themselves playing it and put it into an article. I felt like that wasn't right. So, but I mean, there are videos of people playing this game if you want to check it out. The final copy, final version of it. It just came out. What was it, last Friday? I think last week. So, and it's going to be coming to Steam. It was supposed to come out on Steam last week, but it got delayed by a couple weeks. So it is now set for July 24th. Yeah, so that's 10 days from now. July 24th, it'll come out on Steam, and then they're going to also port it to Linux. And what's neat is and we didn't know this before this came out. There is online crossplay among the PC, Dreamcast, and soon-to-be Linux versions, and there hasn't been a Dreamcast game that had cross-play with PC since retail discs were coming out, and that was just Quake 3 Arena and 4x4 Evolution. As far as I know, those are the only two games. Because I was asking around, I'm like, hey, what games could do this? And the only ones people could come up with were Quake 3 and 4x4 Evolution. So that's cool. Driving Strikers here enters an pretty exclusive club.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool one. I enjoyed playing it. I think they fixed a lot of the issues that I ran into with the frame rate and stuff. So I'm excited to try it out, and hopefully, is it only 56K, or are they going to do broadband support for it?
I believe I read that. I don't think I put in the story, but they do have broadband support.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna go download. I'm gonna buy it and play it. Sorry, not download it. I'm gonna buy it and play it. And actually, can you buy it digitally?
Yeah. Like I said, it's 15 pounds. By the digital copy.
Ooh, I'll pick that up then.
Yeah.
Limited Run Games announces Gex Trilogy at their recent
that's the
E3.
The one time
L3.
I saw Gex on my timeline, and I was actually happy and didn't hide it immediately.
Yeah, so Gex, the first Gex was 2D platformer on the Saturn, and they made a couple more, but they did not come out on the Saturn, sadly. But anyways, that's why we're writing about this, because there was at least one Gex game on our beloved console, and Limited Run Games is going to be putting out a collection that they've called Gex Trilogy, so I guess the 3 mainline games. Not entirely sure which versions they're basing them off of, because I mean the original Gex was a 3DO game, and then they ported it to Saturn and PS1, and they all had their own little differences, which you guys went over in a podcast last month, which I linked at the bottom of the story. The Saturn version uses passwords, while the 3DO version will actually let you have a save file and stuff like that. The sequel, Gex Enter the Gecko, is different on PS1 than it is on the N64, where it's called Gex 64, and there's different levels, and some of the levels are taken out. There's an exclusive level in there. And then there's Game Boy Color iterations of the second and third games, which are, of course, completely different. So it's like, what all is this trilogy really going to entail? They gave us very few details. They did say that it's going to come out on the Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox Series, and Steam. So pretty much every modern console.
All the consoles, all the time.
Yeah, and they're doing it using the Carbon engine, which is their proprietary platform made by a YouTuber, Modern Vintage Gamer.
Never heard of him.
Set up, yeah, right. And he's got this Carbon engine able to, make retro games run easily on modern platforms. I don't know how they can just like have it, do that stated mission for all these different retro consoles. Because a Saturn is vastly different from a PS1 and from a Genesis and a 3DO. They're all different. Like how do you just apply the Carbon engine to all of them? I don't know. It's magic. They say it does. So
well, it's tail time.
Exactly.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm a big Gex fan, so I'm not. I like the first
I'm really
two
good
games.
At Gex personally.
Yeah, Pat's crazy for
say
Gex.
I'm a Gex god.
There were enough Gexual innuendos in that podcast. We don't need them bleeding into the SHIRO.
Bleeding into the SHIRO
I
show.
should say, quoting Justin Ventura, I'm a Gexual animal.
Briefly, so Fantastic Pinball Q Tenkai is the best of Saturn that we're talking about this week. Developed by Technosoft and released in Japan, summer of '95. This is an anime-based pinball adventure that you select 3 heroes of Flipperland and play pinball to prevent the resurrection of the Demon King.
No, this one was a surprise for me.
I was surprised that you didn't like it as much as I thought you would, because I figured that because it was Animu that you would just be all over it. But you actually liked some of the more Western pinball games more. Or what was it?
Yeah,
obviously you like Last Gladiators. Everybody likes that one. But the Kaze pinball games. But what was it, Pat? You just didn't like the way it feels?
The thing is that I came off the heels of the Gladiators pinballs and the other pinball stuff, the Necronomicon, and it was just so good. It felt really good, and honestly, those are some of my favorite pinball games. And I'm a big pinball aficionado, like game wise. I love Pokemon Pinball. It's one of my favorite. Honestly, it's one of my favorite Game Boy games. Period.
This is more like Sonic Spinball. It's like there's like top
just
screen,
really
middle
floaty.
screen, bottom screen.
It felt too floaty.
Yeah, it's definitely not about the physics of pinball. It's more just about like all of the power-ups and stuff like that. You've got heaven, earth, and hell, and essentially scantily clad angels.
Exactly.
So you know what you're getting into. It's actually, I recommend it. I recommend folks check it out because it's not bad. And the artwork is cool. It's not the best pinball game on the Saturn, but if you're really into, the artwork and the Japanese flavor, definitely check it out. I think that it's decent. Again, it's like Sonic Spinball.
One.
So if you played Sonic Spinball, you kind of know what to expect.
Yeah, it's no Devil Crush though, to be honest.
Oh yeah, fair. No, Devil's Crush is amazing. SHIRO co-ops with new Terra Player. I'll make this quick. Basically, you can find us now on Terra Player, which is terraplayer.com. I think if you just click on that, it takes you to terraplayer.com, and you can see that it's this new service, basically curation of video game related podcasts. At this time, it seems like very heavily Sega video game related podcasts.
A little bit of bias there.
Everything's, and I'm totally fine with that bias. These are all the channels. You got SHIRO Media Group there, and of course, when you click through, you can see what shows recent uploads, and then shows.
Just little thumbnails. We actually got them to fix the thumbnails for us.
Yeah,
so
they were actually
can...
able to fix the thumbnails and get all of the artwork porting over correctly. But yeah, so folks can find us there, and then they can also find a bunch of other, like, I'm just going to click on shows and show you everything that's here. Radio Sega Area X. You've got Chaos Control Center, Club Sega, Dreamcast Years. Journey into Dreams, Fights into Streams. Forever Sonic's Random Hour. Like, look at all the shows that they have on here. Too. Sega Guys is on here, of course. I haven't gotten to that. Night Train is great for, like, relaxed
What's the vinyl record
music.
up there?
Vinyl record.
There's one
that's Long Play Dance. But yeah, no, there's like the Radio Sega stuff, the Pick and Mix, and the Pop 'em Up is another organization. Radio Redux. Gosh, there's a lot of good stuff here. Sega Addicts, of course. If you listen to them, they're good. Who are these guys? SHIRO? How do you say that?
Get them out of here.
Sword of Sega.
The SHIRO shit show.
Sword of Sega. The Cyber Razor Cut. You got the Dreamcast Hour. Dreamcast Junkyard Dream Pod. Excellent.
Great podcast when you get on that one.
A bunch of cool stuff. There they are, the Sega Guys, Shenmue Dojo Show, lots of great stuff. The Titan Cast. So I mean, and they're planning on adding more. This service is planning on adding more. So that's great. I mean, it'll get it out into more people's hands. Also, I've been relying on Pocket Casts for all of my video game stuff, and it doesn't work very well. And this looks. I've been trying this, even the web app. It works really well, and it's a great way to like have all that stuff at your fingertips. When they do finally do an app, they did say that they're going to do like a Android and iOS app. That'll be awesome, because then I'll just download that and have all these things at my fingertips. So yeah, right now it works on PC, Mac, phone, tablet, Alexa. It even works on Alexa. It's like a skill. You can say, play Alexa, play TerraPlay or whatever, and then
I wonder if I can do that with Siri. Hey Siri,
should be able to. It's not Siri, Alexa.
Hey Siri, I want to see if it works. Siri, play TerraPlayer. See if it works. Oh no! What app do you want to listen to this on? Let's listen it on. It doesn't work. Yeah,
no, it doesn't work.
We'll get that sorted out. I was hoping that was be able to work.
PC Wizard announced DreamPie 1.8 DLE, and this is mainly in preparation for the upcoming revival of the Capcom KDDI games and Daytona USA, which will be required to play these games online once the servers for them go live. In addition to support for Netlink and X-Band games, has been added as well, thanks to Sega RPG Fan for that. New features and improvements.
Much love.
Added tunneling software by Sega RPG. Allows support for both for Capcom's KDDI games as well as the Sega Saturn Netlink games and X-Band. More details here, and he even links to our website for playing your Saturn online. Shouts to Joe, Sega RPG Fan, for everything. We love you, man. And then added IP Fix by Shuoma, which will be required for playing Daytona USA online. Added Shuoma's DC Gmail installer with the root, which removes step 1 from the setup process. Added BBA mode software by Scrivani, which allows you to use your Pi as a Wi-Fi bridge for the broadband adapter and show up on the Dreamcast now. This is disabled by default, but can be enabled by using the .bba mode.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. Added backup DNS server in case the main one goes down. Wi-Fi is now enabled by default, which allows for headless Wi-Fi setup. Okay, and Raspbian build has been updated to Buster, which
I really should get a DreamPie going. I have an extra Raspberry Pi 3 laying around. Maybe I should just
send it to me. I'm not kidding. If you're not going to use it, send it to me. No, but seriously, you should definitely. Which will allow for better compatibility with Pi 4s and later, so that's good. Huge thanks to Sega RPG Fan, Shuoma, Scrivani for their contributions, of course, to Kazade for developing DreamPie in the first place. There's download links. Cool.
Trevo, they actually have a dual one now, so it shouldn't matter for the Fenrir. So you just pick up the Fenrir Duo or whatever it's called, and it'll give. And if you have a 21 pin, it'll fit. If you have a 20 pin, it'll fit. So
who is this guy? After
Trevo?
TraynoCo.
I don't know. Can you ban him from our site? I don't like his articles.
Ban him. Okay, well, he wrote some crap on our site about 3 LaserDisc classic games getting. No, tell us all about this, Pat. What is this? Because I haven't even read this yet. So
Taito. This came out of the blue. So they announced 3. It's the collection called Taito LD Games Collection. So with this, LD stands for LaserDisc, and if you don't know what LaserDisc is, it's a giant disc. Okay, so actually, let's start from the beginning. If you don't know what LaserDisc is, 1, Google it. 2, you should probably know what it is, but if you watch this. But 3, if you don't know what it is, short story, it's a giant disc that's the size of a vinyl record that stores information on there in an analog format. So this is analog, even though it uses a laser. It's a weird thing. It's a whole thing I don't want to get into. It's all pits and stuff, but it's basically the precursor to CD or whatever. But yeah, anyways, they and the arcades actually had LaserDisc games. So if you ever played Dragon's Lair, Cliffhanger, aka Lupin the Third arcade game, was it Mad Dogs, the one with the gun, the Western one, or like the other like LaserDisc like FMV games.
Dragon's Lair.
LaserDisc, yeah, Dragon's Lair, yeah. 1 and 2. Space Ace,
yeah.
And you just name it, and pretty much it uses a LaserDisc player that's shoved into there, and it plays it off a disc. And one of the issues with all those players that they die over time because these things are old technology and they suffer from. You thought disc rot was bad on CDs and Saturn games and stuff, and all that. It is bad on LaserDisc. Like there's literally titles that are just gone. Like
the pressing
everything from
process
the 70s,
was really bad.
Yeah, it was pretty horrendous, and a lot of these manufacturers, a lot of it was in-house at Pioneer or Sony, so a lot of these discs were really not taken care of, and a lot of them are just dying. So 3 titles were released by Taito that used this Time Gal, Ninja Hayato, and then Battleship Yamato, which is based off the anime of the same name. Also they also pressed slightly differently as well. It's 2 discs glued together. It's a messy process. It's a whole thing. I don't want to get into it too much on the show, but they released these 3 games. You could and basically they're interactive games. You might know Time Gal. It also was ported to the Sega CD as well with an English dub on it. But the only ones that were released in arcades officially here in the United States was Time Gal and the Battleship Yamato. And both of them were actually released unsubbed or untranslated, so it was just Japanese like dialogue. But the good thing about all these games though is that it doesn't require a lot of English to play. All the controls are really straightforward, and it says action button or like left, right, and action and hitting a button. So you'll know what to hit when time comes to play the game to do the motion. So they announced that's this collection that's remastered. I believe it's just a full remastered, better graphics. I don't know the process they're doing it, whether it be upscaling the old LaserDisc or actually bringing the old cells and old visuals and putting it in there. A new project for the Book/Slash team. That's funny. These
games are kind of like the precursor to like QuickTime events, wouldn't you say?
Pretty much.
It's like
QuickTime events of the game.
Yeah. It's like exactly. So cool.
Yeah. So. But
I know you're a huge LaserDisc fan, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I have a few of them.
You have a few of them. So you're going to be picking this up?
That's the thing, is that they did announce because originally it was set for Japan. That's all they announced it is. But later on, they actually announced that it was becoming internationally. But my thing is, there's a lot of ifs in this collection, because is it just going to be a straight we Englishize the menu and then the rest of the game's untranslated? Are they going to add the dub for Time Gal in there from the Sega CD? Like, there's a lot of questions that are that remain unanswered about it. That's hopefully what we'll hear about it. But Taito did announce that it was going to be internationally released. There's no release date yet for it. Right now, it's set for December of 2023 for the Japanese release, where you can actually get a regular edition and special edition, where The special edition comes with not only a bunch of bonuses like reprinted standees, reprinted posters, and pamphlets. It actually comes with a whole new game called Time Gal Rebirth, which is probably the first game in probably almost 30 years that it released. And it's going to be a prequel, not a prequel, it's going to be an epilogue to Time Gal in some aspect. So whether that's going to be released in the United States as well is the West is very unknown. I hope it does because I'd love to play more Time Gal, and I think it's a really fun game. I like it. Like, I would highly recommend that you play it if you don't.
Yeah, like I have it on the Mega SD, like on the Sega CD. But this is superior. I mean, this is like the legit way to experience it. The original LaserDisc rips, you know.
Yeah, because the CD one's heavily compressed.
Heavily
and by heavily,
compressed.
I mean heavily compressed. And this is going to be what was released in arcades in Japan and the United States as well. So it's going to be very high quality. Hopefully they do a complete film rip of it and just completely get the film and clean it up. So that'd be a lot of fun. But for now, there's not a lot of information on it. It's a pre-prologue? Right. Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess that's funny. Pre-prologue. Mega LD version released in the United States. I actually do not know about that. My guess is no, but we can always look that up. I'll actually look it up right now. Mega LD Time Gal. It looks like it's a Japanese only release to my knowledge. It's also $800, so if anybody wants to spot me some so I can play it, just let me know.
Cool.
But no, it's looking like Japan only, but yeah, probably not going to be, like I said, it doesn't require a lot of English, so it shouldn't be too bad.
Any other takeaways from the week, or are you ready to enjoy your weekend?
I'm ready to play some dollies, I guess.
You painted them, now you're going to play with them.
Yeah, I do a little bit of both. I interchange it, so cool. Back and forth. I think that's about it, though.
I don't think I have anything scheduled for this weekend. I'm just gonna, because last weekend was so brutal with all that information. Unless of course like some new information falls out of the sky about Sega, and then we have to like kick it in high gear. I think I'm gonna take a bit of a break.
We'll take it to the limit.
Take it to the limit.
But yeah, I think there's besides the thing we're doing. Oh wait, no, we're not doing that. That's next Saturday. Sorry about that. I get my dates mixed up.
Okay.
I'm gonna be really busy though, but I really don't want to be.
Okay.
I don't want to be busy. I want to have a good time.
Well, okay. So let's check out the
Patreones.
Patrons.
Patreones. All right. Shout out to Murder of Crows, Emerald Nova, Johannes Fetz, Nate Lawrence, Blue Moon 95, Cerillion, Derek Fredrickson, David Zaney, Derek aka A-Team, Fat Drunk Friend Otaku, Jim Clasher Rank, Justin, Momphis, Normal Guy, Nutrageous, Robert Ramsey, Roan Dished, Seg Steve, Stoneman, Tanuki Trev, Theron Brown, and Young Money Sawee. If you'd like to get a shout out on the show, you can back us at the $10 and up level. And for $3, you can get a bunch of bonuses like early access to podcasts, get the early access to the net links when we do that eventually. The magazine, $1 and up, you get the magazine. You get featured in the magazine, get your name on there. So there's a little bit of bonuses with that. And like if you don't want to support us financially, consistently, you can buy like a merch. I know Dave's been working on a merch project, right, Dave?
I've been working on a Teespring shop that we can plug into the YouTube, because that'll be much more convenient for folks than having to click over to Threadless and do all that.
Did they allow us to implement that yet? I always thought there was like a threshold for that we needed.
Well, I thought we reached it, but maybe not.
No
I don't
idea.
know. Yeah, I thought we had reached it, but either way, I'm getting it set up so that it's ready to go whenever that happens. I've got some new shirt designs that I'm going to be getting up on both Threadless and Teespring. So
I'll make sure to buy one of them.
Yeah, you guys can donate to us just one time through the website, or you can just not donate it to us, but you can join the Discord and just be a part of our community. have fun chatting with other people about all of this Sega history and stuff like that.
And trust us, we don't ignore you or anything. We'll still talk to you even if you're not a patron.
Oh, absolutely.
So don't worry.
Absolutely. I mean, like, yes, we do have like an insider chat, and that is one of the benefits of, and we do drop, we kind of use that insider chat the same way we would the patron dash, feed. We'll always drop new links to content in that insider chat for folks to check out. We do have some insider conversation, but all that said, I mean, we're in general and in the Saturn channel and everything else almost daily. So you can definitely reach out to us and talk to us and talk to a bunch of other folks. That's what it's all about, is building a community of Saturn fans and Dreamcast and, Genesis 32X.
No Genesis fans. No. We're all pretty much encompassing of Sega. So
yeah,
love that. You can also check out the Sega guys just released a Discord as well if you guys want to go over there and,
They did. Yeah. Just today, I think. Yeah. So that's awesome. Join the Sega guys Discord and also check out their podcast. Their YouTube channel is growing steadily, and they're continuing to provide a lot of great content, which we wholeheartedly want to help plug and promote. We love those guys. I'm looking forward to doing some more crossovers with them. In the meantime, just SaturnDave and TraynoCo reminding you guys that you must play your Sega Saturn.
You must. I put the chat to the Discord in there. You can click on that. You must play your Sega Saturns. If you don't, Segatsu will come and do something.
That's right. Guys and Segals. Yes. Sorry, I don't know. That's funnier to me than it should be. But yeah, so I'm tired and about to just call it a week.
I'm gonna go play my dollies.
All right. Have fun, Pat. Have fun, everybody.
Oh, peace.
Catch you next week. See you. Who else is in here? Dan. Bye, Dan, Anthony. You got, yeah. Thanks for everything, and we'll see you later.
SEGA Saturn シロ